My name is Thomas. I'm 76 years old, and I need to tell you something that took me 7 decades to understand. I wasted 40 years of my life trying to be someone I wasn't. Not for myself, not even for strangers. For my parents. 2 people who've been dead for over 20 years now. I'm not telling you this because I want sympathy. I'm telling you because I see young people making the same mistake I made. And I need you to understand what it costs. Because the price is your life. Let me take you back to 1965. I was 17 years old, sitting at our kitchen table with college brochures spread out in front of me. My father was a doctor, a good one, respected. He'd worked his way up from nothing, put himself through medical school during the Depression, and he had one dream for me, that I would follow in his footsteps. The problem was, I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to be a writer. I'd been writing stories since I was 12, filling notebooks with characters and worlds that felt more real to me than the one I was living in. But when I told my father, he looked at me like I'd just told him I wanted to throw my life away. He said, "Writers starve, Thomas. Doctors save lives. Which one sounds like a man?" I was 17. I didn't know how to argue with that. So I went to medical school, and I hated every single day of it. But I told myself it would get better. That once I was practicing, once I was helping people, I'd understand why my father pushed me so hard. I graduated in 1972, started my residency, got married to a woman my mother approved of, Linda, a nice girl from a good family. We had 2 children. I built a practice. I did everything right. And I was miserable. Not obviously miserable. I didn't cry or complain. I just felt empty, like I was watching my own life from outside my body. I'd see my patients and I'd think, this should mean something to me. But it didn't. The only time I felt alive was late at night, after everyone was asleep, when I'd pull out those old notebooks and write for an hour or 2. Stories nobody would ever read. Dreams I'd buried so deep I could barely remember what they looked like. My father died in 1987, heart attack, 62 years old. At his funeral, people kept telling me how proud he must have been of me, how I'd honored his legacy. And I stood there nodding, thinking, he never once asked me if I was happy. After he died, I thought maybe I'd finally be free. Maybe I could close the practice, do something different. But my mother was still alive, and she'd say things like, "Your father would be so disappointed if you gave up everything he worked for." So I stayed. Another 15 years. Linda and I grew apart, not because we fought. We just had nothing to say to each other. We were 2 people going through the motions. The kids grew up, went to college, started their own lives. And I kept practicing medicine, seeing patients, pretending I cared. My mother died in 2002. She was 84. I was 54 years old. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have anyone telling me what to do. I should have felt free. Instead, I felt terrified. Because I'd spent so long being who they wanted me to be, I didn't know who I was anymore. I stayed in medicine for another 10 years, not because I wanted to, because I didn't know what else to do. It wasn't until I was 64, sitting in my office after a long day, that something broke. A young patient, maybe 25, came in. Talented kid, smart. And he told me he'd just quit his job at his father's law firm to become a photographer. He said his father wasn't speaking to him. His whole family thought he was making a mistake, and he asked me, "Do you think I'm crazy?" I looked at this kid, this brave, terrified kid who was choosing himself over everyone else's expectations, and I told him the truth. I said, "I think you're the smartest person I've met in 40 years. Then I told him my story, all of it. He sat there, quiet, and when I finished, he said something I'll never forget. He said, "You still have time." 3 words. You still have time. I went home that night and I sat down with Linda. We'd been married 42 years. And I said, "I need to tell you something." She looked at me and she said, "You're not happy." Not a question, a statement, because she'd known for decades. She'd known and she'd stayed anyway, because she was doing the same thing I was, living someone else's life. We separated 6 months later, not angry, just honest. And at 65 years old, I started over. I closed my practice. I sold the house. I moved to a small apartment by the ocean, and I started writing. Not for publication, not for money, just for me. Every morning I wake up, I make coffee, I sit at my desk, and I write. Stories about people who are braver than I was. People who choose themselves. And you know what? I'm happy. For the first time in my life, I'm actually happy. But here's the part that haunts me. I'm 76 years old. If I'm lucky, I have maybe 10 more years. I spent 40 years being who my parents wanted me to be. 40 years. And now I get 10. That's the trade I made. 40 years of their dream for 10 years of mine. And I can't get those 40 years back. I can't go back to my 20s and say, "I'm going to be a writer." I can't go back to my 30s and say, "I don't want this life." I can't go back to my 50s and say, "I'm done pretending." Those years are gone. And what do I have to show for them? A medical degree I resent. A career that meant nothing to me. A marriage that ended because we were both living lies. The only things I don't regret are my children. But even with them, I wonder who I would have been as a father if I'd been happy. If I'd been myself. I see young people today, in their 20s, their 30s, and they're doing the same thing. Going to law school because their parents expect it. Taking over the family business even though they hate it. Marrying someone because it makes everyone else happy. And I want to shake them. I want to say, stop. Stop right now. Because you will wake up one day and realize you gave your life to people who aren't even here anymore. And you'll have nothing left. Your parents love you. I believe that. Mine loved me. But their dreams for you are not your dreams. Their vision for your life is not your vision. And when you're 76, lying in bed at night, the only person who has to be okay with the life you lived is you. Not them, you. I spent 40 years afraid of disappointing my father. And you know what I realized? He would have been disappointed no matter what I did, because that's who he was. He was a man who loved through expectations. And I couldn't meet all of them even when I tried. But I could have disappointed him and been happy. Instead, I tried to make him proud, and I was miserable. And now he's gone, and I'm the one left holding the bill. If you're reading this and you're living someone else's life, please, please stop. I don't care if it's hard. I don't care if people are disappointed. I don't care if they don't understand. Your life is not a gift you give to other people. It's yours, and you only get one. Don't waste it trying to be who someone else wanted you to be. even if that someone is your parent, even if they sacrificed for you, even if they love you, you still get to choose yourself. I didn't, and I regret it every single day. But you can. You still have time. I'm 76. I'm happy now. But I'm also running out of time. And I'd give anything, anything, to go back and tell my 17-year-old self, be a writer. Your father will survive the disappointment, but you won't survive 40 years of regret. Don't make my mistake. Live your life, not theirs. Because in the end, they're not the ones who have to live with your choices. You are.